All right, take it away, Mike Morrison.
Awesome. Thanks for coming, y'all. So today you are going to learn basically general design principles that will help you for the rest of your career. So if some, how many of you were here on like Friday when we did the last one, the slide design one? What percentage do you think?
Most.
Most? That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because there's not a lot of overlap. So on Friday, y'all sort of learned like really good principles for slide design, which was doing like one image that will help everyone can remember or whatever. And how didn't text us really is really hard to use on slides, and why I don't use text on slides because it comes through the same channel of your brain as my voice is coming through right now. So today we're going to talk about more general stuff. It's going to help you with posters, reports you design, um, and still more presentations. So I will share my screen.
And they have all watched the Better Poster video that kind of went, viral. So
You guys are the best.
they have
Okay,
some
and the
background
hardest.
knowledge.
This, yeah, okay, that's fantastic. Great. And like that'll give you a lot of good background. Again, you're always the best at this. And like and it puts me on my A game because it means you've seen everything or whatever. I gotta come up with new stuff for you. Okay. So can you see my screen okay, Patricia and Whitney?
It's just
Black
dark.
screen. That's right. Cool.
That's
All
what it's
right.
supposed to be. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, cool. They're basically like three parts. The three like core kind of skills you got to develop to be a good designer. And you're going to be a scientist, but if you're able to have some design skills too, the good news is that very, very few other scientists have any design skills. So your bar to be like really good at science communication is pretty low, which I like because, like I think, like I was saying in the last call that my brother designs graphics for Marvel movies, and my slides get a lot of compliments, but next to his, they're like finger paintings, right? So I'm self-conscious about that. There's always another level, but in science, it's not very difficult to have like really like ahead of the pack kind of like design and things. So you're going to learn three skills. The first one is controlling where people look. That's probably the most important skill in design. The difference between a good designer and a bad designer is that a good designer knows how to direct your eyeballs through a design in the same order. And a bad designer, you just, when you look at the design, like a poster or whatever, you just kind of don't know where to look. And if you have that feeling on a poster, a slide, or a report someone hands you, even if it's a Nobel Prize winner, if you're just kind of like disoriented for a second, you're like, I don't know what to look at first, whoever handed you that or is giving that presentation probably still has design skills to work on, and that includes me. So we're going to learn how to control eye movements. Y'all already learned on Friday that like you have three channels you process information through, which is like you have eyeballs, and you have ears, and you have emotions. But on Friday, we didn't go over on our presentations talk. We only focused on your eyes and your ears. So today we're going to try to focus a little bit on your emotions, which is the most powerful one. So as usual, we start with a game. I'm going to link you all to a Google Doc that will be yours. I think
If
you
you
know
can
how this
try to
works
do
now.
two of them, this way we can actually have
Oh,
it run.
split it.
Yeah.
Let's
Just
try it. Yeah, yeah, like last
copy.
time. Yeah.
And if your birthday is in the first part of the year, between January and June, just do the first one. And then if your birthday is in July through December, do the second one. We'll see if that randomness is any random or not, but it'll help us not overwhelm the Google Doc. So Mike will give slideshow one and slideshow two. And
What
again,
was the break point again? It was birth date.
up through June, right? 6 months, I think, and then July through December. They're coming.
Doc
The
app.
links are coming, but
Yes,
Mike has to
they're on
make
their
two for
way.
us because we're just this huge group
It's
that,
exactly right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
You're
breaks.
also you're you also all participate, which is great.
Yes,
But
that's how we
also
do it.
creates a good challenge. Let's see. All right. I brag about y'all the other groups. I'm like, you know, one group, they just like rock into Google Docs and break the whole like Google server because they're so awesome. You NASA scientists or whatever, slacking. All right. Um, okay, share the link. All right.
So that's the first one. So only if your birthday is through June 6th,
This
right?
is this is the
I mean,
I think that was the after
through
June one.
June, not June 6th. June is
I'm
the
gonna
sixth month.
I will look at the title of the doc, and then I will try to name them appropriately so that if you're not sure which place you're in, because I was ambiguous about that, then look at the title of the doc and make sure you're in the right place and tell me if I seen it twice. That look like two docs, Patricia. One is should say before June, one says after June.
Okay. You probably have
Is
to
that right?
because all I'm saying is controlling eye movement.
Oh, refresh. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you should be allowed to edit. Yeah, yeah. Just don't edit. So when you get to the doc, right click on the first slide, duplicate slide, put your name in the speaker notes. So it's gonna look like this. And then you're gonna be like, oh, somebody already did it. You guys get the drill. Duplicate, and then it'll be like
Just like
right
last time.
slide, do not touch. Exactly. You got it.
Okay, the links might be in reverse order. Don't worry. Just look at the title, guys.
My
Look
bad,
at the
y'all.
title. If the title is before June or and after June, June goes into the one that says before June. I guess it should say before July to be,
Oh,
mathematically right. Otherwise, June
before
gets left out.
before it's true. Before July, and
And
then after
after June.
July.
No, after
After
June.
June. Right. Okay, cool.
We're
Yeah,
really
y'all. I
making
mean,
it work hard. I mean,
I appreciate it. Like,
are you
yeah,
still in
yeah.
the US? Are you still with our times
No,
or
I'm in Hong Kong as of like an hour or 4 hours ago.
and
So
it's
we
what, 3
yeah,
a.m.?
10 p.m., which is actually
10
more
p.m.
my natural time. Yeah, yeah.
It's
So I
not
just
bad.
did the
Okay. Lane, what's
yeah.
your question? You got a hand up.
It's saying that I can only view. It's not letting me edit.
Okay,
Thank you
we'll
for
change
pointing that
that.
out. Let's make sure. Good call, Lane, and refresh. You should be good. All right, everybody's got their own slide. So your first lesson here is something called Greeking. You see all just sort of like these like rectangles, right? But when a lot of times when you start to design something, a presentation, poster, report, whatever, your tendency is to like the best thing you can do sometimes is slap real content on it. The worst thing you can do is like put fake content, like title goes here, name goes here, or whatever, right? Because a lot of times the real content is much longer than that. So that's your first tip is like ideally you kind of work with your actual real content and just get your content slapped on there first. But second best, or when you're struggling with layout or something, is something called Greeking. So if you can see my screen, I'll see if I can get an example of this. You've seen this before. Like when you load a web page and like all like the rectangles load, it just looks like a bunch of rectangles for a second, like this. You guys have seen that before? Like the web page loads and like it just like looks at like it looks like gray boxes or something before the actual content loads. Um that's called Greeking. It's basically you're just blocking out your content. Like that example. Yeah, where you're most text is really just rectangles. And so you can think of these rectangles in our Google Doc as anything you want. They can become like placeholders for your images or graphs or lines of text, right? So we could make some be lines of text and just put it here like this and just create a little line of text. Let's see, get it small, but like that. And you can copy and paste it, right? And you can kind of create something that looks like a paragraph like that, maybe. Or we could create like maybe a figure like that. What you can do is hit Control C, Control V to copy paste to make these. And it's going to come back in a second. This could be a figure. Maybe you have like a background image, right? Like maybe you want to take this heading and like give it a background. So you could drag it all the way across, right click, order, send to back, and then change the background color like that, right? Now you got a back that could be, a fancy, the best background image in the world is going to go here. But right now, I just need to know that it's the background of this rough color, right? Or whatever, right? So this is the idea of Greeking, where you might have like a few lines of text right here, an image over here. You're going to go find that image and write that brilliant text later. But for now, just in terms of a design layout, you just know that an image is going to go here, text is going to go here, and this helps you test the overall layout. So that's first lesson. If you want to, just start making some. So let's spend like a few minutes, make yourself some paragraphs, make yourself some images, and kind of like have an idea in mind of, this is silly, but like if you want to think of a topic, like what you're going to try to make a little poster here about, just think about like what kind of stuff it would have. Like, like if you do research on owls or something, you'd be like, well, okay, there's going to be a picture of an owl, and owls are kind of like a, long rectangle creature or whatever. So there's going to be like an owl picture or whatever. So just kind of in your head, start moving these blocks around, start reshaping them into text and like fake figures and fake images and things. And just keep in your head kind of what they are. I'll give you like 5 minutes. Preview the next one.
Some are saying they are not able to edit their slide.
Thanks, Teresa. Let's see. Editor.
Yeah, it seems
I
like the
tried.
questions are correct. Someone is saying to go ahead and try to refresh. Other people are saying right click on the slides and choose duplicate. And they're saying that it's working better now.
Okay, great. Try both those if you're having struggles. Like refresh
Again,
first.
refresh, because I think
Yeah.
it was changed.
Start a timer here. This is actually one of the first steps I do when I create a poster now or something like that, where posters and stuff like there's so much content you have to deal with, and like there's so much like alignment to worry about. Sometimes it's easier just like, okay, let's just revert this back to blocks. And it gets you out of your head as far as like thinking about like how the owl picture looks or what the font is. You just can just stop thinking about that. Text is just rectangles, pictures are just rectangles or circles or whatever. Which, by the way, if you want to make your picture a circle, you totally could. You could just be like, oh, I'll figure out how to crop the picture into this shape later, right? Like you can just sort of offload those decisions until later. 3 more minutes. And that's the beauty of this Greeking approach, is that like it lets you focus on the layout and less on the content itself.
So we still have students who aren't sure what to do on the slides. So basically you're just creating a format, a template, something that you think will look good.
Yeah, draw some, you're gonna take the stuff that you're making now, so make some. I think some of the examples I made were like this slide example, Shelby's here, perfectly good, right? So Shelby's picturing probably maybe some blocks of text, right? Maybe some like a big image here or a figure, right? And then I told you you can make your own little paragraphs. Like if you go back to my slide, just go duplicate slide. If you make a paragraph, to make a paragraph of text, you could just make little small rectangles like this. If you want to, you're just making pretend content. Just think of like a piece of content. Like I want to make a paragraph, right? Like what do posters have? They have paragraphs, they have images, they have like graphs and figures, they have like references and headings, right? Like a heading, you could even do like maybe it's like a thick block of text, right? And the paragraph looks more like, if you look at my screen, the like thinner, smaller text, right?
You guys are struggling with like, what should this be? Remember, you're making slides right now.
Yeah,
right?
it's nothing yet. You're just making elements.
But what I'm saying is that they're thinking
Oh,
about, okay, I've got a linear
oh,
regression I'm going to be presenting. How should that look on the slide? Right?
yeah,
Where should the graph be? Where do I have the text? And
exactly.
you know,
Don't add the images yet.
yeah, don't add any actual things yet, just
Yeah.
blocks. Because that's a great background, but we don't want it yet.
Save it. Yeah, for a minute from now. If you've already added the background a little bit. But yeah, just exactly as Patricia said, as always. Thank you, Patricia. Very
No, no
helpful.
worries. It's just
The stuff I
if I
explained
put
badly.
if I put it in context of what they're doing, it makes it easier, I think, because
Yeah.
it can be immediately applied.
That's great. Yeah, exactly what you're doing. Just think of like making a poster or explaining your research and what that needs. It's going to need text and figures, and expressions. But just you're training yourself, and you're almost done here. But like you're training yourself to reduce very complex content into a block, because everything is really just a shape the way your brain first processes it. So if you move it around, shapes first helps. Okay, cool. So everybody's got some example content. You'll have time to tweak this later. By the end, this slide will look a lot different. So let's go back to second. Okay, you see a big floating eyeball?
Hmm.
Nice,
Yes.
cool. A little creepy.
Very creepy.
Great. Okay,
Halloween.
cool. Yeah. Just remember that when we get to the emotional design, I could have chosen a regular eyeball and I picked the creepy one because at least it's emotional. Creepiness is emotion. But okay, so controlling eye movements is probably, again, the most important part of design. And I can teach you how to control eye movements really, really easily. It takes a long time to master it, but it's really simple in concept. So the biggest factor in how to make people look at something is just contrast. Like everybody notices this yellow apple first, right? Every single time. If you train a machine to have computer vision, they usually train them to look for these kind of spots of contrast. So we look at things that are different before things that are the same. This applies to every single aspect of your life. Like I usually notice when I get back to Hong Kong, like I walk down the street and I'm like, why are people staring at me? Is there something on my face? And I'm like, oh, I'm the only foreigner in this whole city or whatever, right? Like I have my like face literally has contrast, right? So it applies like way beyond posters. It's how the eye kind of directs itself. So you can take this as a couple ways, right? It's these two slides, right? Like it's about the figure and the background. So you can think of your blocks now, where you're going to notice this like a darker block on the left, right? Where you're going to notice a dark color on a light background or a light color on a dark background, whichever one has contrast. So if I switch the background like this, do you notice that what you see first changes? Like now you see the number 2 first, but if I switch the background to light, you see the number 1 first, and they kind of like pop in and out depending on what I do with the background. That's that contrast effect. It's not so much whether it's like a very strong color, it's more about how different the front color is from the background color. That's kind of what attracts your eye, which means you can manipulate two things. You can manipulate the background color or the foreground color to affect the same thing. So in this picture of scientific posters, first question, put in the chat, whose legs do you see first? Blue pants, I assume everybody put, right? Let's say.
Yeah.
Everybody got blue pants. Okay, yeah, blue, absolutely. Blue guy, exactly. Middle ones. We don't know gender, but stylish bell bottoms. Exactly, right? Now, which poster do you notice first? Put in the chat. In middle, yeah. I mean, we're cheating here because there's one full poster and it's right next to the blue pants, but still. Okay, next question. Which part of the poster do you notice first? Left side.
Title.
Adam's 12, exactly, right? Basically 100% of you. And if I run, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to run a software on this. This software is called iQuant. They very generously donated like a license to me to be able to run this kind of stuff. So I always give them a shout out. What iQuant does is it tries to predict with AI where human beings are going to look at anything. And if we run AI on this same photo, it predicts you're going to look exactly where you did, right? It even got the blue pants. And this kind of shows you what I really, really want you to take away from this, especially those of you that are skeptical, that are like, oh, this design stuff doesn't just crap. Let me just do my data or whatever, right? Is like, there's a science to design. Like there's enough of a science that you can predict where people are going to look and where they're not going to look. And that if in your career, you will have things that you want people to look at. And if you want them to look at it, you have to use the science of design. You have to make it look very, very different. So let's go back to your slides. So I'm going to give you a few more minutes. And what I want you to do is just try to pick one element that's like the most important. These are imaginary elements, so you can make up what it is, like my intro paragraph, or actually we could make this really fun and just make it like, forget about the numbers. We were originally going to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but like just pick an element that you want to emphasize first and then make it look different from the others. So this should be pretty quick. I'll give you like 2 minutes here. It doesn't have to be a different color. You can try a different color, but like just something, just make it look different than the other ones around it, which will be more challenging if you've moved stuff around. Let's see. So 2-minute timer. All right.
I'm still getting a couple of people saying they're trying to edit.
Can't
Remember,
edit.
even though we split it in half, they each have more than 40 people in them, or at least one of them has. I don't think it's split in half. I'm kind of curious to see how many slides are in each. But remember that it's still going to be a little laggy. And they're just asking to reiterate what you asked for, like just
Sure.
restate it, and that's fine.
Patricia, do you want to, just in case I missed the explanation, like, so to make sure I was clear, like, it's just like pick one of the elements, your imaginary elements that you're going to want people to look at first and make that one look really, really different. Make it
So
pop
let's
out from
say
the
that
others.
you're talking about linear regression. Let's use the same example, you guys. Let's say that we're not adding pictures yet, you guys, and text. We're just trying to use something else to make people's eyes to get there, right? Mike, that's what I'm
Yeah,
understanding.
try to use basically just color or size or shape or something like that.
Boldness, something.
Yeah,
You can have
try to
it. You
just
can have
color.
numbers. The text that you're allowed to use is numbers because the numbers are already in there. Um, and so if you have that linear regression and you really want people to look there first, how are you going to direct their eyes?
Try just color. Yeah, try
Yeah,
just a different color for now, and we'll get to other things in a second. Thanks, Patricia.
links to
Gonna lean on
slides.
you a little
Let
bit.
me go back in time here. People want links to slides and they're pretty far
Okay, cool.
back. So if your birthday is um, before July, use this link, I think. Is that one. And then after June is the one above that. So hopefully, I'm trying not to open it so I don't create more chaos. But there's 44 in the one after June. So pretty even split. Birthdays are
That's great.
fairly random good thing.
Nice.
I mean,
And it looks like
I wouldn't think so, but
that. Yeah, I guess it worked.
depends on
That's
the
good. Normal
population.
distributions work. Exactly. Yeah. It looks like you guys are doing a great job with the pop out effect. So this is actually pretty, and some of you got bored and started trying to do multiples, which is totally fine. You're gonna learn more about how to make this effect better, but like the basic is what you just did. Just make one thing pop out. A lot of people really don't even know that. They don't know to just make one thing stand out. Mavender says, would asymmetry work? Because everything is symmetrical except for one thing that is lopsided. That would work great. That's called breaking the grid. If you gross the person's brain out, they'll remember you because disgust is extremely attention getting.
Yep.
All right, back to my slides. Let's see. You're going to learn more tips, though, for a second to make your blocks better and pop out more. So most of these pop out effects rely on evolution, right? Like you want to pay attention to the close tiger before the far tiger. So my brother, the one who did the Marvel movie stuff, worked for Google. I was trying to explain to him like the science of visual attention and how we look at things, and he was like, honestly, you're just hacking depth perception, which is a perfect summary of it. You're just kind of tricking people into thinking that some of your blocks are closer than the other ones. Closer things, what kind of properties do they have? They feel like bigger, they feel like more intense, right? They feel like darker, or they feel like higher contrast, right? So like the easiest one is big thing versus small thing, right? So if you think about arranging the content on your like fake poster here, people are generally going to look at big things before small things because big things feel closer. The other factor is using this, like you can use this in a group, sorry, where you could design your poster just using this, just using big things. Think of like your most important part of the poster being like in this big number one spot, less important, a little smaller, and then like your extra graphs or your extra text or whatever, that can go like a little bit smaller elements, right? So you pick 3 sizes for your poster, you're like big thing, then I'm gonna have 2 medium important things, I'm gonna have 3 like less important items, and then we're gonna size them in this block. Really, really simple trick to try to move eyeballs through your poster. If you show people this layout that you're seeing, most people's eyes will go in the same order, which is what separates a good design from a bad design. So you can combine these two, where you start using that background contrast I showed you, where the first one is really big, really high contrast. Second one is like smaller, sort of a dark gray on white. And then the third one is even smaller, light gray on white, right? So you're descending, you're getting high contrast big to low contrast small. This poster right here is like a perfect example of all. He almost did exactly that, right? Also shout out to David, who's founding a new scientific journal that is really, really well designed. So you can see he's basically just done big thing, small thing. He's got his like, big, medium, small. And then the text is actually even smaller, right? So he's got like 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you want to do your blocks in this way, that's cool too. You can also do this with graphs. So you can think about having like a data visualization, right? So you could make the more important line bigger. Or you can have this pop out effect where the biggest, like your annotation that you want people to actually pay attention to is slightly bigger. So, okay, knowing what you know now, go back to your slide. I'm going to give you a few more minutes. Use that power for good and try to, what you're going to try to do now is you've successfully made one of the elements on your slide pop out so people will see it first, like every time. What I want you to do next is figure out how to direct people's eyes in the right order that you want through the rest of the content, which is much, much harder. So if I'm using Belane's slide here, they've got 5 popping out. Great. Now what I want is to direct them through. Maybe I want them to see 4 and 6 next, and then 2, and then 3, and then 1, right? Like I want to maybe pick that order and figure out how to sort of maybe like if I'm going to mess with your slide here, but right now these 4 black rectangles are the same size about. So using these principles, I want to try to make them a little bit more like flow the eyeballs more using size or contrast. So 5's working well, 4 and 6 are good. I want to make them look at 3 next. So I'm going to take that size down maybe a little bit, and then maybe use the background contrast to like fade it out a little bit. And now I want to make them look at 2 later. So I'm going to make that one even smaller. Sorry, Polino. And then 1 is actually going to be seen later because people read in a Z pattern. So that's your last tip, is that people tend to read in a Z. Oh, sorry.
So just going off of the idea about graphs, right? Remember that you're telling a story and that the story already makes sense to you. You already understand exactly what you did, what it meant, what it showed, but no one else does. So when you put a lot of information on slides or posters or papers, people are not going to be able to glean what you already know. And it's so obvious to you that you almost always, students in my experience, forget. Like they forget to tell the most important part because it's so obvious to them already. So when you have your graphs, you're talking about your axes, Mike is absolutely right to take that extra moment to think what color, what size of the line even do I want to be most prominent to show what I found. I love arrows, when you can point to the actual spot. Like, don't even be subtle about it. Like, here's where I want you to look, on the graph. It's very powerful. Um, I promise you, if you make your slide simple, no one will blame you. No one will be like, this is too simple. This is too, this assumes I'm stupid. Nobody. Everyone will be grateful.
It's true. And also like as you're learning in this game, like the more elements you add to your slide, like 6 things versus 2 things, the harder this is to do, the harder it is to direct people's eyes. So if you only put 2 things on your slide, or if you only put 1 thing on your slide, everyone will look at that 1 thing and nothing else, right? You don't have to worry about it. And so the more clutter you add to your slide, the harder it's going to be to direct people's eyes efficiently. So something like a scientific poster is usually almost impossible.
Yeah, and we have been trained to make certain scientific posters a certain way. Even science fair is horrible.
Mhm.
And Dr. Holden and I have not been brave enough to break the pattern. We want to, write to the Society for Science and be like, can we make a poster any way we want? And I think the answer would be sure.
I'm almost positive, at
And
least from
and and
working with
and they might
conferences.
say, and you might lose, or something like that. But I beg to differ. I think, and I'm the one who always wanted students to put more on their posters. So I'm the crazy scientist.
No,
And
it is that we're trained that way though, right? Is
we
like the
are.
more content is like it feels more rigorous, it feels more detailed, right? But this you're learning right now in this exercise that like there's an upper limit on how much content you can get people to look
There
at
are
in the right
2,000
order.
posters at ISEF, International Science Fair.
Mhm.
And I make it a point to walk through. There's absolutely no way to learn anything, period.
It's really, really hard. Yeah. And it's like, again, though, lots to improve. So
Yeah.
I've seen people just make art exhibits out of their posters. And as Patricia was saying, like if you take a very big risk with your poster, you could also like, I've seen some people get harassed for being different. I've also seen people win awards, right? And so
Exactly.
like you kind of gotta like risk it. Let's see. Okay, so a couple more minutes here on the timer. Just try to make people look through your blocks using just
Again,
like
you're
contrast.
trying to sort of direct us in a certain order. Like,
Exactly
where do
right.
you want us
Yeah.
to look first, second, third, fourth?
And you have 1 minute left. Let's see.
Yeah. I used to want to do it. I want you to first look at number one, then at number two, then at number three, but that's not quite the point. The point is you tell us where you want us to look.
Exactly. Yeah. Ignore the numbers for now.
Oh, some people are putting images. Do you want them to?
That's fine. That's cool. That's next
Okay,
anyway.
images are cool now, guys. You have 30
Yeah, yeah.
seconds.
Let's just play
Go
jazz. Yeah,
crazy.
30 seconds. Exactly. And
You're,
what
you've
part of
been
the
given
reason is that,
permission to go crazy. I want to see it.
yep, go nuts,
Creativity.
even crazy images. And because people will look at the images first, though, especially if they have faces on them.
Yes.
All right. And then I'll give you your next tip. Your next tip is very fast, and you get to go back to your slides. Just give you 10 more seconds here. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's see. You should see a Z pattern on the screen.
Yep.
So that's what I was talking about before, is that like if you're stuck on how to do this, so you've learned now that you can make people look at big things before small things, at very high contrast things. Things look very different before things that look the same. Your next tip in controlling where people look is that there are certain patterns that you learn to look at. And one of those patterns is the Z. So if you can't think of anything else, a really, really good way to lay out your content is in a Z pattern. And what that means is you put the most important thing at the top left. People read left to right, then down, then left to right. And so you'll notice if you browse like Apple's website or anything like that, all their content is like that. It's like right, left, right, left. I know you've scrolled through stuff like that, like shopping for an iPhone. It's like, big hard drive, and it's like gorgeous screens on the left. And then, like super good FaceTime is on the right or whatever, right? Like it does that alternating pattern because of this Z layout pattern. So if you want to try it in like a couple minutes, I'm gonna give you like 2 minutes here to just try to adjust your design. You don't have to put it in a full Z layout since you've already created some of your layouts for your imaginary content, but just try to get inspired by the Z to move something around. Maybe move a less important thing closer to the bottom right or a more important thing closer to the top left.
And if you guys want to put content from your slides that you're designing, that's fine. At this point, we're trying to make your work better. So that's fine. Now you've got the sort
Yeah,
of
yeah. Go
knowledge
nuts
of
on images and stuff if you need to. If
color,
you can think of something.
size, yeah, color, size, and order, Z pattern. Try to do that. Now, sometimes it is very true that if you want to go against the grain, like if everybody made Z patterns, like if every poster looked like better poster, which would already be better, right? We'd already learn a lot more. But they all had their title on the left and like that poster that we saw. Then you are challenged to put it on the right, like
Because
alter.
of contrast,
Yeah,
right? Like
contrast is
these
gonna
rules can
stand
can
out.
exactly like, yeah, these rules can totally compete like that, right? And I like, yeah, I don't even want all better posters or whatever, but it's exactly what happens is exactly what Patricia says. Is if you make every layout in the poster session the same, it's like it's smoother. You know where to look for everything. It's less fatiguing, but you lose a little bit of that like novelty and interest. And I want like surprise. So
Yeah, I
I
want
think
to
who was saying in
challenge
chat,
Dr. Holden and myself this year to have at least one student who is going to ISEF. So they're going to change their poster from the regular regional fair to make it like this.
you
Just
can do it in small
the
ways.
bravest student. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And like I've had people just like change their title or like move their authors or like
Yeah, it
subtle
doesn't have to
things, right?
be a huge change, but something that will draw the judges' attention. They'll
Yeah.
remember that poster.
Yeah. And remember, like, this is all science you're learning. Judges and the conferences don't know. And I know that because I work with conferences and they have me teach these things.
Right.
And so like it's very, but that's kind of your advantage, is if nobody really knows this yet, you can kind of use the directing the attention and things like that. The first better poster ever won best poster in the whole show when nobody knew what it was, just because it was like, wow, this stands out so much or whatever, right? It was also really good research. But okay. So pencils down, you guys are doing really great. I'm looking through some of your slides. I love the cat theme on one of them. Okay. So I'm going to go through what I want you to do now is review each other's slides. So I'm going to give you like 2 minutes. And what I want you to do is go through and leave a note like in the speaker notes. So the speaker notes are right here at the bottom where it says KV slide, do not touch, like just be like, so I'll do Bolano's slide. Sorry, Bolano, you're getting all the attention because you're up front. But I'm just gonna like quickly view it, like kind of like close my eyes and then open them and like just notice what I see first. So I kind of see like the 3, then the 1, then the 2, and then maybe like the 4, 5, and then gray 4, 6 or whatever. Just, it doesn't matter. Just write down what you see first to help the author of that slide know how well they direct your eye. And they can see if that's what they wanted. So in 2 minutes, again, pick any slide, or you can do this on multiples. Just go in the speaker notes, close your eyes looking at their slide, open them, and then write down in the speaker notes which like blocks you see first and second and third and fourth. Does that make sense so far? Again, you guys are doing all new
And
games
I
here.
challenge some of you to go to the end of the deck and start from the end.
Yes.
And some
I
of you
should
to
do that.
start from the middle, because that's important that we don't leave people at the end behind. Let's do them all. See, for me, that one competes the red and the blue. They're both very dramatic.
Yeah, but I'll bet you read the red first.
I think so, yeah.
Let's see. Just list of numbers. I'm just going to go through and do these. Brianna, this is actually an example of what someone's talking about with symmetry. The tricky part about all this is that all the things I'm teaching you kind of compete with each other. Like if you have the Z layout competing with like the size of things or the contrast, right? That's going to like pull attention everywhere. The art to this, or the science, is to use everything I'm trying to teach you together. So make something big, high contrast, top left, right? Almost always going to be seen first. Like the number 2 on this slide. All right, you've got another, 1 minute left. if you start bumping into somebody else, just switch slides or try to move your cursor away. There are 27 seconds. It's great. I keep running into y'all, which is good. That means you're giving a lot of feedback. I'm trying to pick the slides so that people have, yeah, 10 seconds left. All right. Pencils down. I hope a lot of you got feedback. All right, I'm going to show you how some of this works. Let's see if we have time for one more game. Okay, so you'll see this was my first poster. If you're looking back at my screen, Patricia, thumbs up, and or Whitney, thumbs up if you see my poster. Cool. This was actually my first poster in grad school. It is covered in text, right? You can see I tried to do some what I think are innovative things, right? Which is like, I don't have authors at the top. My author is at the bottom, right? Like that's heresy a lot of times. I have like this so what box, right? Where I get to the point, I like just pull out the point and make it in like reversed out, right? I've got icons and figures for everything. Things are mostly well aligned. My correlation table has 2 columns instead of the original 50 or whatever it had. So I just shortened it to just the most important points in the correlation table, right? I made like the good things green and the bad things red. And I really worked hard to make things into bullet points and lists. And no one saw this poster. No one looked at it. Like I stood there and just like people just walked past. One dude at the end felt bad for me and just said, oh, my sister studies that, and then kept walking. That was the entire poster session experience for me. And this was the example of like, you can follow all the traditional advice right and still lose, right? Because the traditional advice is wrong. That whole idea of just covering your poster in text and making it look like a paper isn't correct for the context that it's in. It doesn't work. And I got so frustrated with this that I created this on my next poster. Forget the content. I think the content's too sparsely laid out. But I did this giant title. What does work meaningfulness mean, right? You can guess what would be the number one. What do you see first, right? That giant title. And in person, everyone read that. No one read any of the rest of the content because I didn't put any effort into that. And it was just too cluttered and too dense still. But every single person walking by read that title. It was in person. That title was massive. And people would come up to me and they just start answering the question like, well, to me, work meaningfulness means or whatever, not about my research, but fine. Like I like that. I'm a psychologist. You can pour your traumas on me or whatever. That's my whole thing. And like, so I like learning about people's stories and stuff. And so this is when it kind of hit me that I was like, what the hell are we all doing? Like why are we covering our posters in text and expecting people to see them? We should be designing these like billboards. Obviously, that's the way to do it or whatever. And I had stumbled upon something years ago in that poster that I've now kind of collected science to show you. So these are 2 posters. What you're going to see is I'm going to hit play on, these are 2 videos. I'm going to hit play and you're going to see what it looks like when people look at these posters. We track their eyeballs to see where they looked on the posters first. The one on the left, honestly, is a better designed poster by traditional standards. It's from prestigious universities. It's from MIT and Harvard, right? It's a poster about visual attention, which means they literally study the things we're talking about. So they did a pretty good job at coming up with the traditional poster with like the columns. They didn't put a lot. It's not very cluttered by traditional standards, right? The one on the right, ugly, hideous poster, but the one on the right has one key advantage. Can anybody guess what that advantage is? It's very small, but it's kind of related to what you just learned. Read the chat. Let's see. Contrast, the colors, color contrast, contrast title. Exactly. You all got it. This title at the top has nothing else around it. There's no like logos, even though these are prestigious logos, it's still clutter. It doesn't matter. Harvard logo is still clutter, like at that point when you're talking about visual attention and all these like Xerox and like the author names and things like that. Great for prestige, but it clutters that title. So this poster on the right, it has nothing around it. It has negative space. What negative space does is allows you to focus on what's in it. So remember I said that if you want people to look at your one thing on your slide, only put one thing on your slide, like Patricia was saying, that's what that title does. So when we run the eye tracking on it, the blue is very noisy. If it's high contrast, I'm curious about that. Oh, it's noisy as hell below the title, but the title should be like clean. I'm not sure what you meant. But anyway, I'm gonna play the video. Let's see. Yeah, explain noisy just so I know you mean in the chat. And I'll come back to that. Okay, we're gonna play the video.
It's one thing to be seen, and it's another thing to be obnoxious.
Oh,
You know,
neon.
you tell students to stay away from like you know, bright pink or orange. Even though you'll get attention, it might be negative attention, which sometimes you don't care. This blue doesn't say that to me, but there are some, yeah, neon-y things that would
That makes sense.
definitely make it obnoxious. And you have to be careful
Yeah,
because if you
unless
cross
you're
the
studying
line, they
neon.
might not read it either.
Yeah, exactly. And like, okay, Nazine, thank you for explaining. Yeah, it may be darker blue, might be less like, and people perceive color differently too. So like, it's a hard game you're playing. But anyway, the thin line, goofy and minimal. Yeah. But we're going to play, okay, on the left here, we're going to play the video of the eye tracking. Ready? What you're going to see is 13 people trying to look across this, and you're going to see where their eyeballs looked. Where I want you to look is this header right here. Look at how they process the title. Watch. See how it kind of dances all over the title and to the logos? They're kind of like all over the place. And then when they get to these columns, they kind of like pick a column, right? They don't go in the same order. So we're going to play that one more time. See how it's kind of like dancing. All the dots are dancing all over this title, right? And to the logos. Now I'm going to play the one on the right. And what you're going to see mostly is clear left to right movement. Oh, Chitana says she's also working with eye tracking. Great. If you want to do a poster study, hit me up. This is actually, this data is collected by an eye tracking researcher, not me. So that's really helpful. Anyway, okay, ready? I'm going to play the one on the right. Look at the title. You're going to see 13 people look from the left to right and then mostly the same order. Bop, 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 bop. You see that blob just move left to right? I'll play it one more time. Like that clear, that's 13 people reading text analysis can predict social conflict in teams almost at the same time. It's a really subtle thing, but that's the power of negative space to direct where a lot of people look in the same order at the same time. That's like efficient design processing. So I'll show you another one here. So this is the original Better poster Patricia was talking about, right? This was the first viral controversial design where usually in design, if something's very broken, you just delete everything and start over. And then that's what I did. I was like, what's the minimum thing that goes on a poster? Take away and a big figure, right? I still think this works. So if you run eye tracking on the traditional poster with a traditional title, you see this pattern, right? What you're looking at is what clutter looks like. When a design's cluttered and you don't know where to look, you see this eye tracking pattern where people are looking at silly things like the school logo and stuff like that. When you run eye tracking on this, it's not perfect, but most people look like dead center, like main finding, big figure, right? So this is kind of evidence that, like, again, if you put one thing on there and put it in negative space, everyone will look at it efficiently. You'll get that attention. And in later years, this poster has been rated like better for scientists with disabilities. It obviously performs better in eye tracking. Scientists have rated it better for discovery in one pilot. And it also, like, there's some evidence that it might get more stops. We really want to collect those glances because we think it gets more like people looking at it. But you can see, obviously, one poster directs the eyes much better than the other. The one on the right absolutely destroys the one on the left in eye tracking performance. And it's because of the things you're learning right now. Here's a generation 2 Better poster. So you can see, like, what I tried to do is like my most importance on the left, right? And then I tried to get their eyeballs through it kind of in a Z pattern on the right. If you run eye tracking on this, it mostly works. So again, traditional design is very cluttered. People don't know where to look. This one, you can see there's this like consistent pattern to where people look. Again, it's not perfect, but you're seeing the one on the right direct people's eyes a lot more efficiently. And in person, what that means is people just feel comfortable looking through your poster. They're just like, oh, I didn't have to like think about where stuff was. So this is one of my proudest achievements, as silly as that may be. So this poster uses a Z layout and high contrast and low contrast, right? So you can see it's in a Z layout. So you read the top, then you like two figures, then you go back to the methods and then scan across left to right. You'll also notice the magic in this poster is right here. So if you look at this methods section right here, you see how it's like black text on a gray background, and it switches right here between black text on a white background and black text on a gray background. That's switching from high contrast to medium contrast. And then down here where the Georgia Tech logo is, and the authors, that's lower contrast, gray on gray, right? So you have these three contrast zones: high contrast, medium contrast, low contrast. And what you're going to see is they work really, really well. Watch this. So I'm going to hit play the eye tracking. Right across the top, mood, affects, attention at work. Everybody reads it. 13 people, same thing. Now we're on negative affect is distracting and the two big figures. And right here is one of the proudest moments of my career, at least so far. And that's that nobody is looking at the methods. 13 people, no eyeballs are down there yet, right? So it was able to get people through three main findings and two key figures in the same order. This is my personal best. When they get to the methods section, then people kind of scatter. So like you'll see it doesn't have a good left to right movement in the methods section. So I need to work on that more. But just that top part is the best I've done, is getting people to look at three takeaways and two key figures correctly in the same order. That's my personal record, and I study posters. So this is like really hard to do. I've seen people do better than me, or what I thought would do better than me, just didn't measure it. So it just kind of shows you that like it's a difficult game we're playing. But contrast and Z layouts will take you very, very far. And if you want to copy any of these designs, you can. Okay. In a little bit of time we have left, we're going to try to talk about emotions. So remember from our last one, we have people process information through your ears, through your eyes, and through your emotions. If you can make people feel something about your science, that will help them with memory and remembering what you learned so much better than even visuals and audio can. So if you look at TED, right? Like if anybody's seen a TED talk, there's so much emotion in this. Like this is a slide. This like burning rainforest or whatever is behind her. That is a slide she put in her PowerPoint deck, right? And in this environment, like how much emotion does that generate? Like that's your bar, right? Is stimulating that much emotion with your science. But we usually put people in rooms like this and we fill like PowerPoints full of bullet points, and it doesn't really have that same emotional feel. Scientists get kind of touchy about this, like, well, emotion doesn't belong in science, it's marketing, but that's literally an unscientific statement. Like emotions are how you remember things. And if we're ignoring an entire memory channel, you're not going to remember the science as well. The other thing I think
It's
people don't
crazy
realize,
because scientists are very passionate, right? Like I feel like if our passion could come through, then people would actually understand us better.
I completely agree. And like I always joke that like if you get a scientist drunk and ask them to explain their research, suddenly they're like funny and charismatic and it's clearer, or whatever, right? The other thing is like the emotion doesn't have to be like inject this into your veins right now, right? Like maybe you're like, developing a new material and the material is soft. So you just want your poster to feel soft, right? Like that's not like controversial. You're not like, vaccine misinformation on that. You're just making a soft material feel soft, right? A lot of things in science are like that, where there's not really a disadvantage to making it emotional and there's a million advantages. So what I want you to do in the last few minutes, you've already got your slides. Let's just do it on there. Just make a little list. So I'll think my slide still exists. Let's see. Share my screen again. It's over here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag a text box like this, and I'm just going to list some emotions that come to mind with my research. So this is the hard part, is like if you can get a list, you can get everything else. So I study like how to make scientist tools easier. So like I'm just going to like you got to try to feel it. This is like if we're having a meditation session, like get into your yoga, like, well, I forget the pose, but like like the classic pose or whatever, where you're like meditating and just be like, what does your research feel like to you? Mine feels like easy and like fast, short,
Clear.
light, clear, exactly, frictionless, smooth, Things like that. Just make a list. That's it. I'll give you exactly the amount of time we have left, 4 minutes. Make a list of things your research makes you feel. Those
And
can be
this could
bad
be a
emotions.
research that you're wanting to study, you are studying,
Yep.
or ASRI research. Any. If I was talking about the research that I'm most interested in, which is CRISPR-Cas9, it's life-saving, like life
Keep
death.
going.
Like it's big.
Yeah, life death. Keep going.
Yeah,
Put it on your slide, Zainab.
it's saving, people. So transformative. All of
From a
these,
bad life. Yeah. Keep
yeah,
going.
it's very, yeah, no, it's very powerful. It's very big, but I can imagine anything being important, right? Like research
What's
scientists
your
don't do
specific
things for no
research?
reason. Like
It's true.
despite the current environment where people think science is nonsense and wasteful, that's how we get medications. That's how we get better education. That's how we get everything, technology, right? Even basic research, even when you're just observing nature, if you're just trying to answer the question why or how, there's a reason for it. So it's not, yeah, insert a text box, you guys, into your slides.
Yeah. And try to, if you can't, if you're only thinking of those big emotions and you're struggling with that, think of like concretely. So like posters, if I'm trying to literally like improve people looking at a poster title or something, like that's my study, then I want it to feel like a title. I want it to be like up, top, big, like expansive or whatever. And then like fast, things like that are helpful. So like Patricia said, every science can be world changing. So try to figure out what your particular kind of research area feels like. And it might be bad. It might be just sort of like pressurized and tense and like conflict and hurt and like things like that. I'm a psychologist, so like
It
some of
could
our
be
research is
scary,
not fun. It could be scary. Absolutely.
and that's memorable.
Very, very.
If
Let me see
you,
what y'all are doing.
I remember, when we had the ozone holes, we're saying global climate change is not something we can fight and it's too big and we can't deal with it. But there were those fluorocarbons that like everybody banned because they were like showing this picture of this hole in the ozone layer and like radiation coming through and like melting us. Like that image on the Senate floor like made everybody vote like no, let's ban them. Like it was so easy because it was so clear.
That's a great
Clear and
example.
present danger.
Yeah. If you want to change people, like if you're in science, you're in this to change some part of the world, and I think you're going to have to convince funders that your research is important. That you're going to have that moment
More
Patricia
than
said
ever.
about more than ever. It's going to be more than ever. You need to use raw emotion.
Yeah.
But it helps on everyone. Like it just like people, let's see. Because that's why people do the research in the first place. Interesting. Inspired. Grounded is a really interesting one, Shayla. So you guys give her a minute here. I don't want to interrupt your flow, Shayla. Let's see, those are good ones. Really keep going. Start getting to words that feel like shapes. Like what kind of shape is it? What kind of color is it? What kind of like form or pattern? Is it big, small, light, dark, circular, round, square, arced? Perfect, Sarah.
Yes, you're doing it right. Just type emotions that your research will.
It's because it's a crow. Like, ah, ah,
Hey,
ah.
that's an emotion. I'm frustrated, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think you gotta work, Sarah. Like if you're doing your crow calls there, like just should be like whatever the crow is feeling. So like or like
Yeah.
okay. I think y'all are done. Awesome. So I wanted y'all to list that out. The next step, obviously, if we did a whole talk on just emotional design, would be to find some imagery, find some shapes, find some fonts, colors, things like that help you generate something on that list. Inevitably, there is something in that list that made you think of a visual, made you think of a shape or a color or a picture or something. That's what the point of the list is to get you to that next step of thinking in those elements, to what to contribute, how to make your research important, like emotional. And a lot of times, is my final point here, what this leads to is like maybe an image like Patricia was saying that you use throughout your career. Maybe it's a color scheme, maybe it's kind of shapes that you keep using in your posters. It always starts with this list of adjectives. But anyway,
It's really
any
interesting,
questions?
you guys. If you shock your audience, you'll get more response. When I give my talk about my
Yeah.
research now, I use buildings. I'm not a architect. I don't really care about building design per se, but it just inspires people to look because they're curious. Where did she do her research next? What did the building look like? And so it's like a continuity, but in a way, expecting something. And it's totally, like I said, a little bit of a shock. Like, why would she do that? And perfectly fine, you guys. Whatever you get to make people remember you and understand you.
Make them feel the emotion you feel is the dream. Cool. Cool. Thank you guys for coming. Is there any questions right off the bat?
So far, most people are following along. Yeah, they're just saying, it's not what they were expecting, I guess, in a way. Like you were saying,
Cool.
scientists and emotion, right? That's not
That's right.
that's not
Yeah.
what people usually put together.
That's
But
why I do
it's
it.
so important.
And Angelia, it's the most important to me. Angelia, poster consultations, will I give you feedback on your poster? I got you better than that. If you go to the Science UX Reddit, or the forthcoming Science UX Discord and you post your poster, you'll get feedback not only from me, but you'll get feedback from professional designers and other scientists before. And like, something you guys need to know from my life in redesigning scientific publishing is that where things are going in scientific publishing is we're going to start breaking out of those scientific journals. And what you're going to have instead is a world where you publish things very, very early. You get drafts together and you get a lot of feedback on your science really, really early. And you just keep getting feedback. And so we're used to this idea of like, make it perfect and then publish it. But where things are going is more like, make something, get feedback, make it better, get feedback, make it better, get feedback, and like, I think it's scary to get that feedback, but if you post it to the Science UX Reddit, everyone's very kind. Everyone will give you like amazing tips, sometimes a lot better than I can because they're like even better designers. But
And take some of what you've learned today into your own presentation.
Please do.
There's a lot of room for emphasis. There's a lot of room for emotion. Our data sets vary anything from, extreme weather events to death, right? We've got all those data sets about mortality. So it's okay. Bring it out, show it.
Please do.
Shock us a little bit. It's okay. We give you a lot of freedom here. This is probably the freest you'll ever feel as a scientist because we're just trying to learn.
Hang
So you
on to it.
practice on us.
Don't
And some
get
people might
crushed.
say that yellow was awful, but that's okay. You learn.
But you're still talking about the yellow.
I know it's a
Yeah,
yellow
exactly.
slide. Is that awful?
No. I was like, no. I mean, like, you're right. Like that. I think like to your point you just made, there's a book I read about color theory because I was so frustrated with understanding how to use color. And one of his points, his name is Joseph Albers. He's a famous artist. He spent his whole life just designing color blocks and said that there's no bad color scheme. There's no bad color, right? It's just color schemes that make people feel a certain way. Like you can have you can have like puke green and brown, right? That doesn't feel nice, but that's the point of puke green and brown. And sometimes you might have a poster that needs to feel disgusting, right? And then puke green and brown is perfect, like, and so like, it's sort of one of those things of like, there's no real bad emotional feel. There's just an emotion that's not matched to the context. Even the neon, like someone was saying, if you study neon,
Thank you
use neon.
again.
Sure,
Like I said,
thank you for
every
coming.
time we hear from Mike, it's different. So I mean, different. It's still the same ideas, but
that's my goal.
In a different way. I love it.
I try the new stuff out on y'all. I really appreciate you being a good audience. Sorry, it's a little bit haphazard, but I learned from y'all, and then I take it to other people because I try to give you the new stuff. But that means
if you have a Zoom with 100 people, you gotta have 2 docs. That's basically the lesson.
Yeah.
And that's fine because
change backgrounds.
That's good. Thank you so much, Mike. We'll definitely have you next year if you're willing. Always.
Of course.
Your
yes.
discussions.
Yeah. Thanks. See you, Patricia. See you, Whitney.
Yeah.
See you, everybody.